So 7 political parties, including the Democratic Alliance, ActionSA, and the Inkatha Freedom Party, Freedom Front Plus, Spectrum Party, United Independent Movement, and the Independent Civic Organization of South Africa have signed a pre-election pact to work together if the ANC fails to achieve a 50+1 majority in the 2024 general elections. They also entered into a power-sharing agreement, which will most likely benefit the DA as the largest opposition party. Let's get some analysis on this. I'm joined now by political analyst, Professor Andre Duvenhage. Very good morning to you. Thank you so much for your time. It's been referred to, mostly throughout those 2 days of intensive talks, we kept hearing how historic this agreement was and how it will provide a new alternative. As these talks initiated these discussions, had an agreement on how they're going to govern if the ANC is ousted in next year's election. How should we now begin to interpret the composition of this coalition agreement?
My starting point will be that the coalition talks is the result of comprehensive challenges within South Africa, politically, economically, and socially, and also that a group of people believe that South Africa is in real difficulty when it comes to ANC government, and they do not want another 5 years. Now, there was a bit of hope when some of the surveys indicated that the ANC support dropped below 50, in some cases even below 40, and the hope was there that the grand coalition could make a difference. For me, the first point is it is important that people is talking to each other. That is critical. And when we look at the 7 parties, they are diverse parties, but they start talking, and that is an important point of departure. Secondly, I think throughout South Africa, not only among opposition parties, there's a debate going on in terms of our future. We need a plan, we need to go forward. And what is important, there need to be a message of hope. There need to be a perspective on the future. But it is not clear if the coalition, the grand coalition, is going to emerge as the winners in the 2024 elections. My own perspective is that their support base measured in terms of previous elections are below 40%, while it is highly likely that the ANC will achieve, if not 50%, very close to 50%, making it easy to create a coalition and govern for another 5 years. But I believe the impact of the coalition will be at best in the next election, 2029.
If the ANC remains in the majority, you speak about the projections and what could possibly be the outcome of the most hotly contested elections to date. What vulnerabilities do you think that this newly formed coalition pact could face?
Well, I think there's a number of major challenges for the coalition group as such. One of the challenges is the lack of social cohesion in society. We know there are huge cultural and racial barriers. We know that when it comes to history, there's a huge distrust. Another big uncertainty, what many people do not want to talk about, is the electoral system. We have an amended electoral act, the 1998 Electoral Act was recently amended to accommodate individuals, but many people believe the amendments is not aligned with the Constitution and the requirements coming from the Constitution. And currently, we are not sure at this point how the election is going to work. For example, if there's a court case, we may use the 1998 election. If there's no court cases, we may continue in the current new form where individuals can be accommodated. And it's unclear what role individuals can play. So there's a lot of uncertainty. I think there's even the possibility that the election may be declared null and void after the election if some people feel there are electoral principles that are not aligned with the Constitution. And this can become a serious problem. So there's a lot of uncertainties, but a lot will be dependent on the dynamics within the ANC. We are currently unsure what can happen with the ANC. We are unsure how the role of leaders can impact on the ANC, the history of conflict, the past national conference, all of these factors. People like Paul Mashatile, what is his influence? What is Ace Magashule going to do? Is he going to continue with Mandla Kufu as a party? So there's a lot of variables. All of this are standing in the context of what I like to refer to as the reconfiguration in terms of post-tipping point politics.
Yeah. Coalition agreements are complex, and of course we've seen the nature of the agreements and of course learning what impact they have on communities which have really suffered because of the dislodgements. What do you think needs to be set out here, or perhaps what could we see as the talks around implementation and putting the theoretical paper and agreement into practice? How do you see that working out?
Yeah, that is going to be the absolute big challenge. But let's look at the process and what can maybe happen in terms of a scenario where opposition parties or a grand coalition is winning an election. For first, in terms of competing in the election, all parties are going to keep their identity. So if you are Freedom Front Plus, you are going to compete as Freedom Front Plus or DA or IFP or whatever the case may be. And then they will basically take forward their campaign in terms of their own policy frameworks, but aligned with some big grand coalition principles, like things like job creation, stability, the battle against corruption. There are a number of generic things. So they will align, and they will most probably not attacking each other. They will align themselves in terms of that core principles. And it may be that in terms of the competition towards the election, they will support each other. We know that there is a so-called head of governance that will be the DA, and that is a bone of contention because some people are saying the DA is too dominant in this process. But the fact of the matter is someone needs to engineer this process on a certain level. So it's a bit of a confederal structure. But let's say if the Grand Coalition is winning, then the coalition should come together. They must decide on ways how they will govern. They will probably accommodating different groupings in terms of a formula referring to proportional representativity, and they will govern in terms of a certain set of principles.
As you speak about these, yes, perhaps just
this is new ground for South Africa.
Yeah.
This is going to be difficult. We need to have a framework where within coalition politics can function. And at the moment, that a framework is absent. And that is why we experience such a lot of instability during, after the 2021 election in the majority of the so-called 70 hung councils as a result of the 2021 local elections.
You speak about different groupings. What if the members of this current multi-party coalition now have to make some important decisions after the elections in 2024, decide on whether or not they are willing or prepared to work with the ANC? I mean, what could that present?
Well, we know that there's huge opportunism in South African politics. And let's use another scenario. Let's say the ANC is getting 48%, and then it will be relatively easy for a party like that party to accommodate, let's say, a 2 or a 3% party and achieve a majority absolutely. So the ANC will be in a strong position. They may impact in a negative way on the Grand Coalition. I think that is one of the main reasons why they started with coalition talks before the election and not after the election. But let's work with another scenario, and there's a lot of uncertainty. Let's talk about the province of KZN. It is clear that ANC support is in trouble in KZN, and they need a partner in KZN. Although there's growth with regard to the EFF, the strong party is the IFP. And I think if the ANC will keep their government, they must most probably align with a party like the IFP. Now, if that is the case, if that conversations are continuing, how will this impact on the relationship between the IFP and the ANC on a national level, given the boundaries of coalition agreements? These things are not clear at this point.
Yeah.
As I mentioned in the beginning, we are not even 100% clear about the type of rules we are going to have during the elections in terms of the amended new Electoral Act. So there's a lot of uncertainty about the election and the application of the election. There's uncertainty about coalition politics, how they will function, and then there's an asymmetrical thing between national and provincial level. And this will make the outcome of these elections very unpredictable. And there are chances that we may see a lot of instability as a result of election results that are not accepted by certain constituencies.
Very well. Thank you so much for giving us some of your thoughts there, some analysis. Political analyst Andre Duvenhage giving us a sense of what the 7 political parties coming together for the multi-party charter, of course, how that could play out and the impact it could have or not have on the 2024 elections.